Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome you to the Farm and Landowners Workshop. If you're not familiar with this, we've actually been doing this for about 20 years. We actually go to a bunch of different territories and have this every year, and so it takes a little while before we get back home. This is our home territory, or at least my home territory. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago was the last one at the Farm and Home Center, and then about 15 or 20 years ago was one at the Hoffman Building in Quarryville. But we do this every year. We try to pick out topics. I will encourage you, we gave you some notepads. Write down anything you think of as you go through the meeting, for any questions you might have for any of the different speakers, and any criticisms or topics that you might like to see covered in the next round. Because we do kind of base it on the territories. You know, we don't cover oil, gas, mineral rights down here, but if we're up in some of the other counties, we do. Solar isn't as big here, so we didn't put solar on the list, even though you're all getting letters for solar, but they haven't really taken hold here too much. But there is a lot of topics we felt that were important to the area, and anybody's familiar with Beiler-Campbell or not, but we've been in business for 55 years now. Started out in the Oxford area, Chester County, and expanded out. We do have a crew. We're spread out kind of across the state, so it doesn't matter if you're coming and going. We can get you covered. We've got people in Northumberland County, Franklin County, Juniata County, Perry County, Chester County, Lancaster County, so the list goes on. So we can cover you pretty much wherever you are. I did get a lot of questions from some of these folks that you called in, so you'll know who you were. Why are you doing this, and what's the catch? Well, there is no catch. You know, we have a philosophy that we're here to serve. We're thankful for the business that we've generated. You can see our sales just in 2025. We sold 151 farms and larger land tracts. I don't know of any other company out there that can compete with that or anywhere close to that. But again, we're not here to take you away from your favorite person. But we want to educate you so you don't make mistakes. I get a lot of calls every year that people, you know, I meet with them, talk to them about tax stuff and different implications of their sales and different things, and then whatever reason they go with the discount broker, and then every April 15th, guess what happens? I get a call. Chris, you remember when you said something about this, that, and the other thing for taxes? Yes. Well, I got a big tax bill. Yeah. And I said, did you already settle? Well, yeah. And you went with that discount broker. And he's like, yeah. I said, well, that's what I got paid for. So yes, maybe I did charge a little bit, but I was showing you how to save that $50,000, $100,000 in taxes. I think that was well worth the extra 10 that you quote saved for the discount broker. So our goal is to serve, to help you maximize dollars. It isn't always your sales price. It's your net dollars after that sale. That's the most important thing out of this. And we're also not here to sell. We do counseling. You know, we do provide guidance, you know, so even if you're doing family transfers, neighborly transfers, and you need help with that, we do that. It's just a time and material. So it's not a commission. Everybody thinks we're out there to get this big commission. So it isn't that. So we do counseling. Yes, if you need to sell, we're here to help you with that as well. The biggest thing I encourage with all this is a lot of the speakers that we have here are people we work with every day. They know their topics. It's a team that you want to put together. At the end of the day, you need a realtor or auctioneer if you're selling, but at the same time, you need a good attorney, you need a good accountant, you need your financial advisors. All that it's a puzzle that needs to be put together. So planning your sale, it drives me crazy when somebody calls and says, "Hey, I'm ready to sell." Okay, well that's great, but let's look at all these things we probably should think about and do. Well, I want to sell this month. I'm gonna sign out there. Okay, but you're running the risk of giving up a lot of tax dollars. So again, planning. So if you're thinking in the future, there's no time frame, but definitely 6 months, a year, or longer, if you're thinking about retiring or selling, doesn't hurt to start that plan, to put it into effect. We do have, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to some of our guys. They can raise their hands if they want, but I'm Chris Taylor. Been in the business 36 and counting, almost 37 years now. We got Alfie Stoltzfus, Elvin Stoltzfus, Noah Shirk, Harold Martin, Merle Stoltzfus, Matt Berge, Wilmer Martin, Michael Stoltzfus, Ryan Clark, Glenn Horst, Garrick Eby, Gerald Nolt, Jake Yoder, Jamie Gandy, and Dan Stolzfus, and they're spread. I forgot Dan; he's out in Center County. So yeah, so there's a bunch of us spread out across the state. So again, we got you covered no matter where you're at. You've got an itinerary, I hope, and so we're going to try to stick to that schedule as close as we can. And then I think a lot of the big thing again about building that team, we do bring the experience, the knowledge, the integrity, and the confidentiality to the transaction. So I think if with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Our first speaker is Dale Hershey from Univest Bank. I forget your actual title, Dale. You're the Honorable Bigwig Chief. But yeah, Dale Hershey from Univest Bank. We work with them a lot. Good lending institution. Oh, I did want to mention the vendors are here, the speakers are here. If you have personal questions, we are going to have a question and answer session at the end. Obviously, you can ask questions at the end of each topic, but we encourage those to be generic questions that would be a benefit to the entire audience. If you've got personal questions, so to speak, we prefer you can go over any time during the meeting and talk to those folks and ask those personal questions. So yeah, but if you do have questions at the end of each topic, feel free to, we'll have time for that as well. So with that, Dale, I'm going to turn it over to you and start us out on our first topic.
Thanks, Chris. I am not used to standing behind this podium here. I see it all the time at the auctions that we get to, but not used to standing behind it. So I kind of get to be on the other side of this morning. So it's good to see everyone out here. As Chris said, I'm Dale Hershey. I head up the Ag Lending Division there at Univest. I'll do a quick shameless plug for Univest. For any of you that don't know us, Univest has actually been in business. This is our 150th year. They're having a kind of a celebration year for being the 150th year. So never been bought or sold. It's one of the oldest lending institutions here in Pennsylvania. The only thing they ever did back in '72, they had changed their name from Union to Univest because there was a second Union Bank and changed the name. But outside of that, we've never bought or sold. They're new here to Lancaster County 10 years ago. They're based in Souderton down, if any of you are familiar with like JBS and Moyer Packing and Mopac, that kind of thing down there in Souderton. We're headquartered right in the middle of all that down there in the Souderton area, which is kind of how Univest got their start in the ag lending business years ago. So we come into the county 10 years ago and started here. We now are up to 11 folks there in our ag department. So kind of like Beiler-Campbell, we kind of got the area covered a little bit in terms of marketing area that we can go. The interesting thing it's been with Beiler-Campbell, we've had such a close relationship with them because of the area that we market to is so similar to them, as well as clientele folks that they deal with. We've had a very, very similar clientele that we deal with, and it's just been a good relationship with them. Chris, you said I think you sold 150 some properties last year. Hopefully we did 145 of them, but I don't we always give them a hard time when they get away, but no, that does happen. Chris asked me to do kind of a quick economic update. You'll have to keep me on track with time a little bit, but give you a little background what we see and what we're up to right now from an ag perspective. I'll start out a little bit, a couple segments that I want to cover a little bit that I'll give you. I'll start with dairy. A lot of guys are asking me, a little bit what we see and what we're hearing, what we feel with the dairy industry. There's not a lot of things right now in ag that I'm not bullish on, quite honestly. And I'm not saying that because I'm an ag lender, but I feel like where we're at in terms of an industry, I feel good about the dairy industry right now. I know things are not great right now, but things are headed in the right direction. Everything I'm reading and hearing regarding dairy, we're bullish on dairy right now. There's a lot of things I feel like are setting itself up for next winter. If you watch the futures markets, there's a lot of things indicating that the price is going to continue to gain strength for going toward next winter. It already feels like it's turning a little bit. There's a lot of things there that point to that. When you read a lot of the economic updates, the cow numbers are just not there to support where we are headed this winter with milk production. The national herd has grown from where we were a year ago. We went from approximately 9.3 million cows to a point that we're now close to 9.6. So it has grown. That being said, the heifers are not there. And that is an indicator cows are again getting tight. We see it. I heard comments from some of the economists. They feel like we could be headed for $4,500 cows next winter. And that's scary to think about as far as cow price. It has its pluses and minuses, guys that are trying to grow and that kind of thing. But the heifer numbers are not there to support it. And I feel like that we're in a good spot in terms of milk price for next winter. So we'll see where that goes. The other thing I mentioned was the beef prices. This beef thing has been so interesting to watch. That, as a bank, we've said different times, we feel like over the course of the last year or two, even though dairy milk, the milk price has not been good, I can honestly say there's calculations out there that would indicate that the beef price could be propping us up as much as $3 to $5 a hundredweight. That's how much the beef has meant to the dairy. And when I say that, you think about if you sell, if a 50, 60, 70 cow herd sells whatever, 3, 4 cows, 3 cull cows a month, tack on 3, 4, 5 more bull calves onto that. Look what that does to your income a month. That's over and above your milk price. And I tell guys, the dairy farmers, I say, keep in mind, you not only, yes, you're in the dairy business, you're in the milk business, but you're also in the beef business. This beef has been real, and it's been a big bump in the milk price. While it's been down here this past winter and spring, the beef price has actually really supported the dairy price. And that's been kind of a game changer. It was something we were not used to. And obviously, guys ask me, how long is that going to last? Again, the beef numbers are not there to support the price drop. If you look nationally, some of the economists and some of the reports that are coming out of the West, the mama cows with calves are not there. The numbers are down that will indicate that the beef price, I think, stays strong for a considerable time. And as the milk price climbs, you're also going to find guys probably will not call as hard. And so again, that factors into that beef price. So we just held an ag summit for our customers back in February, and the gentleman that spoke there, Dr. Cole from Virginia Tech, had talked about he's been kind of touting this for the last year or so. He said this beef price isn't going anywhere for a while. It's here, it's real, it's here to stay because the numbers are not here. And there's a couple indicators, some things that are going on with that. Guys continue to try and get beef cattle heavier and heavier before they go to market. It's the carcass weight, what the beef industry wants, whether it be JBS or whoever. They want these cattle coming in heavier and heavier. So that slowed down the numbers again as far as the numbers going to slaughter. So that I feel like's here to stay. Quick update on the poultry industry with chickens. Obviously, AI, the avian flu, has been a top of mind right now for poultry guys as we get closer to spring. Hopefully that calms down a little bit. It feels like it has slowed. There's still occasional situations that have popped up, but overall, I feel like the movement of it has slowed, and hopefully we get through that again for another winter here. Typically, warm weather cures it, has been the history of avian flu, and hopefully we get to the other side of this without too much significant trouble. But I feel like we are making progress on that. But again, poultry's been strong, dairy's been getting stronger, beef is seriously strong. So the other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit was crops and some of the economic things. The crop price, so much of crops, you pay attention, you watch what grain prices do in correlation with diesel and fuel. So it bears watching. A lot of times, if you look at the history of our industry, we get high fuel prices. You often see high grain prices. Pay attention to that. It'll be interesting. And the grain price has gotten a little bit of a bump here the last month or so. The grain price has been gaining strength. And that'll be interesting to watch where this goes in light of the war, if it slows down, if it stops altogether, what happens to the fuel price and what happens to the grain price. It's also obviously impacting fertilizer with nitrogen. A lot of you guys are probably reading what's going on with nitrogen. If you don't have your nitrogen bought by now, it's going to be expensive this spring. It's also not easy. There's some concern about the supply as well with what's going on with the war. So there's a couple things that bear watching. Pay attention to how I'm doing for time. Getting back to banking, one of the things we get a lot of questions about is interest rates. So in light of what I just told you with some of the farm economic indicators, one of the things, look at interest rates right now. If you go back a year ago, we were probably a full percent higher than where we are. You go back a year and a half, we were probably 1.5% higher than where we are right now on the interest rates. Now, that being said, that is on the fixed rate. You ask pretty much any bank, they're going to be in that 6.25%, 6.5% range for a fixed rate, something in there. Prime rate currently is 6.75%. And I tell guys, pay attention to that. Right now, you can fix your rate at a lower level than what the floating rate, the prime rate is. And that's 0.25% or 0.5% lower. The reason I say pay attention to that is the prime rate being at 6.75% and a fixed rate being at 6.5%. You've got an inversion there. At some point, that needs to change. And the federal government knows that, the banks know it. Normally, you don't fix a rate lower than the floating rate. It doesn't make sense. Years ago, you always paid more for a fixed rate because it gave you that security. It gave you that fixed rate that you didn't need to worry about where your interest rate was going. So that's why guys typically always chose a fixed rate. So guys asked all the time, where's the interest rate going? Well, it's kind of been flatlined in around that 6.75% right now. The Fed just met last week. It's still there. We get a new Fed chairman coming in here at the end of March. So a lot of the indicators, the new Fed chairman is chosen by Trump. Okay, so President Trump chooses the new Fed chairman. President Trump does not have a say in the interest rate. That is to be independent. That's why they have a Fed board, a Fed chairman. But think through this with me, being a little cynical, President Trump chooses the Fed chairman. So if the new Fed chairman is chosen by Trump, that Fed chairman's probably has some, there's some influence there that, hey, I'll appoint you, but this interest rate needs to come down. That's just Dale. That probably shouldn't be on YouTube, but that's just Dale's speaking, that I feel like I think the interest rate the floating rate may come down a little bit here when we get a new Fed chairman. The talk is maybe we get a 0.25%, maybe we get a 0.5% by the end of the year. That being said, don't expect the fixed rate to move because of what I just told you. Right now, the floating rate's higher than the fixed rate. And I think probably maybe we get a drop in the floating rate, but maybe the fixed rate doesn't move a whole lot. So we've been hanging in that mid to low sixes for probably, I'm going to say 6-7 months now, where that has not changed. And I don't see it changing right away either. I think we found a little bit of a sweet spot as an industry. I shouldn't say we, the industry in general. The economy can operate very well in that 6 6.5 bracket. It attracts money to the market for people that have money to put into the market, into the banks. They'll get paid a decent rate for their investment, as well as guys borrowing the money. 6.5, guys think sometimes, oh, that's high. That's not high. You think about I'll take you back. There's some gray hair here in the room. You go back in the 80s when guys were paying 18%. Some of our dads were paying 18% for interest rates. You try and pay that in light of the way things are today with the economy, it'd be fatal. 6.5, 6.25 is not a bad rate in light of some of that. I think we got spoiled with that 3 and 4% stuff that to me, that was not real. That was not something that was sustainable long term. Quite honestly, I could get thrown out of here with Beiler-Campbell for saying it, but that was not good for our industry. Yeah, it might have sold properties and might have really created a boom for property transactions, but in the long run, it wasn't good for our industry to have 3% money long term. And I think that's why I say we could operate very well at that 6%. It's kind of a sweet spot for both investors as well as guys borrowing money. Touch on land value, excuse me. Touch on land values a little bit with what we see in our end of it as a bank. The real estate market continues to stay strong. There's a lot of folks that just cannot get over what some of these farms are bringing. And I got to tell you, you guys ask me all the time, I just don't see the price backing up a whole lot. If you look at land values, especially in Lancaster County, for all of my career in banking, you've seen land values, you didn't see them go up or didn't see them go down as far as farm values. You've seen them plateau at times, but it's just been up, flat, up, flat. Farm values have not come back, and I'm not convinced they're going to. I just feel like we do see some of the 10-acre farmettes, some of the 15-acre farmettes. Some of those at times were overpriced when they were sold, and they'll fluctuate a little bit with the economy. When you see things up and down with the economy, you'll see that a little bit with that size of farm, but you don't see it with the actual full-fledged working farm, I call it. Those farms have just continued to hold their value. And guys ask all the time, how do these guys do it? $3 million farms are tough to pay for with that farm. I got to be honest with you. You do the cash flow, what you can make on a 85 or 90 acre farm, and you look at the cost at a $3 million, that math doesn't work. Now, look who is buying them. It's often farmers, somebody maybe has one or two other farms, maybe they have a farm to sell, maybe they have a business on the side. Pay attention to who's buying them, and there is a correlation there. That is the one thing that is disappointing for me sometimes when I got to talk to a young guy that wants to buy his first farm, and he wants to bid on it at public auction, and he'll say, well, how do other guys do it? Well, it's a little bit, you got to look at where the money is coming from and follow the money trail a little bit. The one thing I will say, young guys getting started, a lot of times they need some help, and I mean that. When it's often a father and son transaction. If a dad's going to charge his son $3 million for that 70-acre farm, it's not going to work. And I hate to tell guys that, but it's true. It's real. The numbers just aren't there to support those kinds of payments unless he has substantial amounts of money to put into it. So that is one of the things that I wrestle with as a lender all the time. That, quite honestly, I say it hurts. It's painful. I'd love to see these young guys buying their first farm, but unless they've got a large pool of money to put into it, he's not going to be able to pay market price. Many times them farms are reduced to that next generation, and that's how these farms get transacted, that get them into the next generation. And so that's one of the things that it is one of the unfortunate things with our industry a little bit. It's not easy to get into when guys are trying to buy their first farm. They're going to need some help. So that's one of the things. But from a value perspective, it's just been unbelievable the way farms have held their value here in the county. And honestly, I'll put a plug in. Farmland Trust is over here. It quite honestly doesn't even matter if the farm's preserved or not with what it does for the price. These guys, you can preserve your farm and you're still going to get market price. It's not getting discounted or hurt by the fact that it's in preservation. So with that, I got about 5 minutes yet. Do you want to open it up for some questions, Chris? I don't know if you'll have to shout it out, but I can take some questions from the audience. Maybe something I said or some question you had out there. Gordon.
When you talk about ag commodities and so forth, I was curious about the produce industry, which is growing. Any thoughts on the future of that, the sustainability of that, what's happening there?
Yeah, that's a great question. He asked about produce and what I'm seeing with that. That has been a great source of income for guys on smaller farms. And the reason I say that, it's been a way for guys to purchase some farms, maybe of smaller acreage, because your income, and I'm going to be careful how I word this, but your income per acre is better with produce. But it's a lot of hard work, and you got to know what you're doing. It's not something, I've warned guys about this when I'll get a phone call that, hey, I want to buy this 15 acres and I want to do produce. My first question is, well, are you doing produce now? Are you just getting into it? Or oh no, we have a garden. I'll do it. I can do produce. There's a big difference. You got to know what you're doing when you're getting into it with produce. But there is money to be made there. And it's how guys have paid for some of these smaller farms is by doing produce. And if they do it well, there's a real niche there, especially some of these roadside markets, roadside stands. Some guys have done very well. If they know what they're doing with produce and they're good at it, there's money to be made there. And we've seen that in the banking industry as niches. I can take you. I mean, it's the whole way across the gamut. Whether it's tobacco, whether it's produce, the roadside stands. Oh man, organic milk, pasture raised, direct market, beef, that kind of stuff. There is money to be made in some of these niches. A lot of it's having the connections and knowing what you're doing with it and not just jumping into it, understanding what you're getting into and having the help, having the support around you to understand what you're doing. Guys making cheese. I mean, the list goes on and on. I said Lancaster County is probably the most diversified farming area that I know for all these different niches that guys have gotten into that have helped support these prices on the farm. And quite honestly, I think that's some of what has kept our prices up, these different niches that guys get into. On-farm shops. We just see so many on-farm shops around the area. But I wanted to touch on something else. We see a push of that, Gordon, with other areas, like getting into some of these other areas. That's been a way that guys have been able to purchase some farms, maybe getting out of the area, maybe going to York County, maybe going to Adams County or Westminster, Maryland. We've had a large group of folks in that moving into those areas the last years, and that's one of the things that the land's a little cheaper out there, obviously. Maybe doesn't have the fertility this area has, but it can be improved, it can be built up. But that produce has been good. It really has. Any other questions? Yeah.
Dale, across the area, not just Lancaster County, what's the impact of farmland preservation on farm value at auctions?
Quite honestly, very little. Very little, and I mean that. I've seen it a little bit, but I'm telling you, it doesn't have that big impact anymore. You know, unless occasionally we'll see it where they've done it where they so restricted it, you know, where you can't possibly do anything at all, and there is variations. Farmland Trust can talk about that, but there is variations of how you preserve it and different things like that with ground that isn't included in some of those kinds of things. But quite honestly, it has not, Chris, maybe you'd argue with me, but I've seen very little impact from preservation in this area. So
I can add to that. I did a study a few years back, and locally here, farms in ag preserve, total opposite of the theory or the way it's quote supposed to work. They were averaging $500 more per acre than unpreserved farms. That's unheard of, but that was just 1 year study, so I can't say it consistently every year. But you know, if it's something that's already got a development plan laid out, ready to roll, you know, it should be developed because it's sitting in the middle of an industrial park already, that kind of stuff. Now you're not going to be able to compete with that. But if it's a general farm, I'm going to say in a farming area, ag preserve has not affected the values. I was going to bring it up during the ag preservation topic, but my example that I've told a lot of people, it's like buying a gallon of milk. Pay $5 for the gallon of milk. I can take that cap off, scoop the cream off, put the cap back on, put that milk back on the shelf, and guess what? I'm getting $5. So it's really taking the cream off the top. Now, it's a simple example, but that's really what it's boiled down to. We're fortunate to have such a demand for farms to stay in farming that keeps that price up.
yeah.
And I will add, he talked about, you know, the appreciation of farms. Again, this was 2 years ago study, but ever since I've been in the business, almost 37 years now, farms have appreciated. It actually went higher in this the last 4 or 5 years, but average over my 37 years, farms have appreciated over $400 an acre. So you just take an average 80-acre farm, that's $32,000 a year. So what I'm encouraging you is tell your young folks, if they're thinking that you're going to help them buy a farm, I've had so many of them say, I need another year or two. Well, that could be true, but you've got to save at least $32,000 just to keep pace with inflation. You're only gaining by waiting a year or two if you're saving more than that $32,000. So, you know, buy a farm when you see it, if you're ready. I mean, that's what these guys are for. So.
What about clean and green? What, being 10 acres or above in terms of the effect for the farming?
We found most developers anymore, if they're going to buy your farm for development, they're already.
He asked the question
Yeah,
back.
she asked how clean and green actually affects farm values.
Yeah.
So yeah, we haven't seen that affected at all. A developer almost inevitably, that's the first thing they ask me, is it in clean and green? Because I got to figure out my rollback tax. They're just figuring that into their price.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's had little or no impact, quite honestly. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Dale will
All right.
be over here if you have any more
Okay.
questions personally you want to talk to him about. But otherwise, Alfie.